This
How
conference will now
to
be
deal with
recorded.
the functions. So in today's session, we will be actually talking about different functions, different data structure functions. But before that, I would like to talk about classes. Okay, so just to give you idea on classes in Python. So because we are going to use the methods, okay, so we are going to use the list methods, string methods, and all those methods. So that is why we need to have some idea on classes. Then we will again we'll talk about classes in object oriented programming concept. So now it's the time for understanding. So what is a class and all we will understand, because inside classes also we will have some functions. Okay, so inside classes also we'll have some functions. So basically we will define a class first. So class in Python, a class can contain variables and methods. A class can contain variables and methods. So what are variables? We know. Then what are methods? Methods are nothing but the functions. Methods are nothing but the functions. Okay, so methods are nothing but the functions. But why we call them as methods? Because they are declared inside the class. Okay, so they are declared inside the class. Okay, so can contain variables and methods. Right. To use the class members, to use the class members, who are members, class members, the variables and the methods. So to use the class members, we need to create the objects. We need to create the object. Okay, so we need to create the object. So how we can create the object and all we will see. But first let us understand the syntax. So syntax is class followed by the class name, and inside, so generally you have uh, class variables. Okay, so class variables, and you have class variables, and you have static methods. Okay, so class variables and you have static methods, and you have instance variables. So instance variables, or I'll say instance methods, and inside the instance methods, so you will have the instance variables. Instance variables. So inside the instance methods, you will have the instance variables, and you also can have the constructors. So you can also have the constructors. Okay, so you can also have the constructors. So class variables and static methods, instance methods. Under the instance methods, you will have the instance variable. So we will understand how what they are. But creating object. Okay, so object can be created. So this is class definition. So this is class definition, and you are going to create the object declaration. So how we create the object? Okay, so we create the object, we can say object variable is equal to, so object variable is equal to the class name. Object variable is equal to the class name. So in this way you can create the object. Okay, so object is created in this style. Okay, so object is created in this style. So in this way you are going to create the object. So after you create the object, then only you will be able to use. Okay, so then only you will be able to use this variable. Okay, So class name, so you are assigning this class name into a variable. So then you will be able to use the class variables, instance methods, and all those kind of things. Okay. So we cannot use the static methods. I'll tell you why. Okay. So now in Python, we have, okay, otherwise I'll write this statement better here. So here in Python, we have again same predefined or built-in classes. Predefined or built-in classes. Okay, so predefined or built-in classes. And second one we have user-defined classes. Okay, so predefined or built-in classes and user-defined classes. So when I'm talking about the predefined or built-in classes, the classes that are already developed, so that are already developed in the program, in the python in the python program environment. Okay, so in the python program environment, okay, so where we have, so we have the programs in the python program and the classes that are already developed in the python program environment, and whose objects can be created, whose objects can be created, and we can use the respective methods. Now for example, I have list class. Okay, so I have a list class. So list class, okay, so how can I create the list class? Okay, so to create the list class, I can say lst is equal to 4 comma 8 comma 9 something. Now what I'll say is I will say lst type. So what is lst type here? So lst type is going to be, a list type. Okay, so list type. Okay, but in order to tell you that it is a class type, I can say print of type of lst. So print of type of lst. Now when I'm saying print of type of lst, so what you can see over here, you can see it is going to be a list. So it is going to be a list class. Okay, it is going to be a list class. So what you are looking out for here, so you are saying lst is equal to 489. So when you are saying type of lst, so print of type of lst means it is going to give you class of list type. So class of list type. So you got a class of which type here? So class of the list type. Okay, so in that way you can see class followed by the class name, and of course inside there are many things. For now you can just ignore them. So then you have the user defined classes. Okay, what are the user defined classes? So user defined classes means the classes created by the user. Okay, classes created by the user. Okay, by the user, and later objects are created. Okay, so and later objects are created. The classes created by the user and later the objects are created for the usage of its respective, methods. Okay, for the usage of its respective methods. So these are which classes? User defined classes. Okay, so user defined classes, how they can be created? So in this way we can create. Okay, now for example, I can go for class. Let's say student class. Okay, so class student class. What we'll do is first we will create only class variables. Okay, so we'll create only class variables. Then we'll talk about each of them. So first we will talk about class variables. So what are the class variables for the student here? So the class variables for the student are going to be something like student number is equal to 4789, student name is equal to Rakesh, and then student percentage is equal to 45.26. Okay, so now we have created a three class variables. Okay, so we have created a three class variables. Okay, so these are the class variables which are created. Okay, right. Now, in order to access them, in order to access the class variables, we can go for. Okay, so in order to access the class variables, so we can go for. So what we can go for here? So in order to access the class variables, so we can go for a class instance. So we can go for a class instance, which is nothing but the object. Okay, and class instance. Okay, so nothing but the object, or we can directly call them by the class name only. So by the class name itself, okay. So how we can do them, right? So first we can directly use the class name to access them. So what I'm saying here, I'm saying student dot SNO. Okay, so just let me print. So print student dot SNO. Okay, so student dot SNO. Then you go for student dot S name and student dot S person. Okay, so how you are accessing them? You are accessing them by first declare it, then you access them by saying this. Okay, so what is the output that you got? So 4789, and you got Rakesh 45.26 and all printed. Okay, so this is the way that you can access by the class name itself. Okay, and there is one more way to access it by using S1 is equal to student. So S1 is equal to student. So now what I can say? I can say S1. I can say S1. Sorry. S1, and here I can say S1. So simply if you are running this, so what you are going to get it here? So you are going to get 4789, same answer. So how you got the same answer over here? Same answer because so you are getting SNO, S name and S percentage. So in this way also you can access the uh, data. Okay, so access the data value. So these are the data values. Under the class you have the class variables, which are known as the class variables or the data members basically. Okay, next we will talk about the static methods. Okay, so here we talked about class variables. So class variables, so what are class variables here? The variables declared inside the class, and outside the methods, and are available and are available to all the methods, to all the methods. and are available to all the methods. Okay, so in order to access the class variables, we can go for class instance, or we can directly call them. So directly call them by the class name, or you can say S1 and all. Okay, so that is how you are going to declare the class variables and access them. Next, we'll talk about the static methods. So what are the static methods? So static methods means the functions declared inside the class, so inside the class, and can be accessed. The functions declared inside the class and can be accessed. Okay, so declared inside the class and can be accessed by the class name only. By the class name only. Okay, so by the class name only. Okay, now what I'm trying to say here is, instead of saying this, what I'll do is I will just give a function something like details. Okay, now I'm running this application, and then here I will say, okay, so I will say student dot details. Okay, so I will say student dot details. Okay, so student dot details. If you run this, so you are going to get something like 4789 Rakesh and 45.26. So what exactly we are trying to get it done here? So we are trying to have the, okay, so we are trying to have the student. Okay, so we are trying to have the student details 4789 Rakesh 45.26. Okay, so what we are trying to do here, so we are trying to get the details from the student. So student dot details. Okay, student dot details. So it is directly accessed by the class name only. Okay, so directly accessed by the class name only. Okay, so no need of any instance or anything. Okay, right, that is static methods. Then we'll talk about the instance methods. So instance methods means the methods uh, declared. So methods means functions only. Okay, so don't take another meaning on it. So they are functions only. So the methods declared inside the class by using self as the first parameter, self as the first argument rather. Okay, so self as the first argument. Okay, so the methods or the functions declared inside the class by using self as the first argument that do not require a value. So that do not require a value to be passed. Okay, so that do not require a value to be passed. So the methods are the function declared inside the class by using self as the first argument and do not require a value to be passed. Okay, so we don't require any value to be, so we don't require any value to be passed. Okay, so this method can contain instance variables. So we'll talk more about instance variables later. Okay, so this method can contain instance variables and is called by using and is called by using object variable object variable which is created at the time of object creation, the time of object creation. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, suppose I have something like uh, okay, so details of self. Okay, so self. So now there is no need to pass any value into the self. Okay, So but if we are doing it like this, it won't allow. So it will say missing one argument and all. But anyhow, if I have to call this, I will say s1 is equal to student, and then get it away from here, and then I can say s1 dot details. Okay, so s1 dot details. So simply first you create the class. So class is created. Then s1 is equal to student. Then s1 dot get details. So s1 behaves like an object. Okay, so s1 behaves like an object here. So which is going to take up. Okay, so which is going to take up. Okay, so it's going to take up the uh, student class object, and it is going to call the details. What is details here? Details is the method. Okay, so details is the method. So that is what is instance methods for you. Okay, so instance methods which will contain self as the first keyword. Now for example, I will say details self comma so student number, student name, and student percentage, let's say. Okay, now what I need to pass here is I need to pass. Okay, so let me take away this. I need to pass. Okay, so student number, student name, and student percentage. Okay. Now I don't require them. So what I will do here is I will just put SN, SM, and SP. Now what we observe generally here, so we observe that we have three parameters. Okay, so we have actually four parameters, but we don't need to send any value to self. Okay, we don't require to send any value to self. Okay, so we don't require any value to the self. So what I can say here, 1478 comma okay, so Sunita comma the percentage is going to be something like 89.36. Okay, so now I can say, okay, so not student details, so I have to send the values to the details. Okay, so now literally what happens, so once we'll run this, now you are going to get those values printed like this. Okay, so how they are getting printed now, so here the values are being passed. Okay, so values are being passed. The rules and regulations of the parameters arguments will be the same. So now 1478 will go into SN, Sunita will go into SM, and 18.36 will go into SP. So into self, no need to pass any value. So there is no requirement for passing any value to the self. Okay, so self is made for instance method. Okay, so self is made for the instance method. So that is why you cannot work with the self. So you cannot pass any value to the self. So here there are four parameters, and here there are three parameters. One parameter is for uh, instance method generation. Okay, so instance method object generation. So in this way you are working with the instance methods. Okay, next we will talk about instance variables. So what are instance variables? The variables declared. So the variables declared inside the instance methods. The variables declared inside the instance methods with the self dot variable name. Self dot variable name. Self dot variable name. Okay, so the variable is declared inside the instance method with self dot variable name. Okay, so with self dot variable name. Okay, and can be accessed throughout all the other methods. Throughout all the other methods of the class. Okay, so it is not only like accessible only in one of the methods, it can be accessible throughout all the methods. Okay, so for example, I will say something like get details, and okay, so get details, I don't want all this, and I will set the details. Okay, so how will I set the details? So I will set the details something like, okay, so sm is equal to, right, so sm is equal to, okay, and sp percentage, sp is equal to 92.56. Okay, right, so now if I am just running this, no need to pass all this. If you are just running everything at once, so you are going to get the error. So it is saying, okay, this is set details, set details. So I will say set details here, and I will say s1 dot get details. So now let me run everything at once. Now, sn. So what it is saying? Sn is not defined. Why? Because Sn is defined in set details, so it cannot be used here. So what we should do is, so we should say self dot. So we should say self dot, and here also we should say self dot. Okay, so self dot. So simply, if you are running the student class, okay, so simply run this first, and then if you run these three, okay, otherwise if you run this, object is created, and if you run this, the values are settled, and if you run this, you will get the uh, uh, okay, s1 dot get the details. So you are getting again error. Why? Because here you made it self, but here you did not. So let's make it self here also. So self and self. Okay, so once again you run. So that is the power of uh, being self. Okay, so s1 is student. So now what you can observe here, 1478 Vinish and 92.56. How it is possible? Because of this self keyword. Okay, so because of this self keyword. So self keyword becomes very important. Okay, so self keyword becomes very important. So here you are just giving this instance variables. Okay, and then we will talk about the constructors. So the constructors are the methods. Constructors are the methods with a special name. A special name. So constructors are the methods with a special name. Underscore init underscore dot py. Okay. So the constructors are the methods with a special name. What is the name? Init underscore init underscore dot py. Okay. So it is, sorry, not py. So it's a file actually. So self and arguments. So self and arguments. Okay, so py is like a package that we'll discuss later. So what we are looking out here for? We are looking out for, okay, so we are looking out for the constructors or the methods with a special name underscore underscore init underscore underscore self dot I mean self from arguments and all. Okay, so these are called when the object is instantiated. The object is instantiated. So these are called when the object is instantiated. So no need for the explicit call. No need for the explicit call. So there is no need for the explicit call. Explicit call in the sense like this, like set details, get details. No, not required. Once you say student, automatically the constructor will be called. Okay. So how this will be? We'll just check. So now, for example, I have a class student. So here I'll say df underscore underscore init underscore underscore self. So the advantage of this constructor is, okay, the advantage of the constructor is, okay, so the advantage of the constructor is that it can initialize. It can initialize. The advantage of the constructor is that it can initialize the values that are required. Okay, so that are required throughout the program. Throughout the program. So that are required throughout the program. So what we are going to do here? So we are going to initialize the values that are required throughout the program. Now, for example, here I will say init. Okay, so first of all, we will try and understand the constructor. So then we will talk about the other things. Okay. Right. So now let's create one more class. So let's put the class name as product. So class name is product. So here I will create a constructor. Okay, so constructor. Okay, so constructor and I will say self. Okay, so self. I will just print. I will get. I will get printed. Okay, so I'll get printed when. Okay, so I will get printed when an object is instantiated. When the object is instantiated. Okay. Now, when the project will be product will be instantiated when you are saying p1 is equal to product. So you simply say p1 is equal to product. So ultimately, this is called. So we are not using anything like init and all. But once you say this, automatically the call will go to the init. The call will go to the init. Okay. So in that way, we are creating a constructor. Okay, so this is the way that we create a constructor. Okay, so we are going to create a constructor here. So that's how we build the constructor. So then, as I told you, the main is uh, to initialize all the values that are required throughout the program. Now, for example, I will create some variables which are created throughout the program. Let's say I will go for, id. So self dot product id is equal to 4179. So self dot product name. Okay, so self dot product name is equal to mobile, and self dot product price is equal to right 41 258 something. Now this I want to use it. I want to use it in something like update details. Update details. This also I'll make it as self. So when you make it self, so it becomes a variable. So now I want to update. Okay, so I want to update. So self PID is equal to 5124, and it is actually not a mobile, it is a tab. Okay, so and the price is going to be 31210. Okay, so 31210. So that is the price of the mobile. Okay, so now I need to print. So get details. Get details, and here also I'll put self, and then I will go for self dot. So I will have to print, right? So print self dot pid, and here also so self dot pid, self dot p name, and self dot p price. Self dot p price. So what we are going to do here, we are going to run this class. Okay, and now how to initialize these elements? To initialize these elements, I want p1 is equal to product. So I have initialized here. Then I will say p1 dot update details. So p1 dot update details I said, and then p1 dot get details. P1 dot get details. Okay. So these are available throughout the class. Okay. So these are available throughout the class. So once you declare them here, they are available here also. They are available here also. Okay. So product. So update the details and get the details. So now you will get the updated details. Okay, you will get the updated details. So this is how we will go for the class product, and we are running the product. Okay, so this is how we can make the variables to be available throughout. Otherwise, uh, if you are using these variables here, it will be a problem. Okay, now constructors with arguments. Okay, now for example, here I will say PID key name, so P price. So here also I'll give PID P name and P price. Okay, so here same thing. Okay, so I'm going to give the details from here. Okay, so here I'll just remove the update. Here I'll remove the update, but from here I will give the okay, otherwise we will let it be there. 024. Okay, we'll say laptop, and we'll say something like 81 71210. Okay. So now I need to pass the values from here. To pass the values from here. Okay. So values we need to pass from here. So product. So I need to pass 1247 keyboard, and I will say price is 700. Okay. So these values will go. So these values will go and sit here. So 1247 PID, and that value will go into self.pid. So self.pid is a value which is throughout use. So these values are only specific to this particular method only. Okay. So in that way, you are going to take up the product and run the product. So what you're getting here, 1024 laptop and 71210. Okay, so 71210. So in this way, you can work with the uh, so you can work with what? So you can work with the parameters also or arguments also. Okay, so this is about the class concept. Okay, so in the next session we will start working with list classes, str classes, so and all the classes and all its methods. Okay, today if we start it won't be enough to complete it, so tomorrow we will talk about that in depth. Okay. Okay, so hopefully everyone understood. Nagaraj, Lakshmi, Shekhar. Okay, so we'll meet tomorrow with much more discussion on the methods. Okay.